This week we topped $200 million market cap. That was. I'm still a bit dizzy from it. By being agnostic and working with anyone and everyone, we're not out there at the coalface trying to compete for customer sales, but we get a clip of every single bottle that gets moved. A big part of it is telling the story. Try not to talk about what you're going to do, but talk about what you've done.
Welcome to Add to Cart, the podcast that express delivers all you need to know in the fast-moving world of e-commerce. Every month, Nathan Bush from 12 High and an e-commerce industry expert will share the news, research and insights that you need to know to keep you at the top of your game. And of course, keep your customers adding to cart.
Hello and welcome to Add to Cart. My name is Nathan Bush, host of Add to Cart and director at e-commerce talent agency eSuite. It's Monday morning. Let's talk wine and fulfilment. What can go wrong, right? Today's guest is Dean Taylor, who has a long history in the online wine business. He's founded and sold wine businesses such as CrackaWines, My Wine Guy, and The Wine Collective. I'd call him Australia's version of Gary Vaynerchuk, but he might not be too happy with that. Dean joins me to discuss his latest venture, Wine Depot, which aims to simplify and streamline the warehouse and fulfilment process for wine manufacturers who want to go direct to customers. Launching in 2018, it has gained incredible traction so far, with some of Australia's leading wine manufacturers signing on. They've also expanded into a new marketplace model and now have a market cap of almost $200 million under the ASX entity Digital Wine Ventures, stock code DW8 if you're playing along at home. For full transparency, I am a very low-level stock owner. But I've featured Dean not because of that, but because I think he's solving a big problem for smaller manufacturers looking to take advantage of the e-com opportunity, especially for Australian producers looking to go overseas. Now, make sure you stay until the end because there is a very tragic and hugely amusing story around a thug and a broken bottle of wine from the 1800s. Dean also shares his favourite wines that he's discovered and currently enjoying. So if you're into that kind of thing, they're worth sticking around for. Apologies again for my voice here. I swear I haven't had surgery to get it deepened. Trust me, I looked into it. It's not a tax write-off to have surgery to get a deepened voice on a podcast, but I'm on the mend. Now, thanks to our partners Shopify Plus and Signet, here's our conversation with Dean Taylor from Wine Depot. Dean Taylor, welcome to Add to Cart.
Thanks very much for having me, Nathan.
Pleasure. Now, we first met, it was about a year and a half ago, back in October 2019, before COVID hit. We were on a drinks innovation panel in, was it Sydney or Melbourne?
It was in Sydney. The retail drinks conference and AGM, I think it was. So.
That's it. And you were in the earlier stages of Digital Wine Ventures, even though it's been going for a long time, but launching the new venture. But since then, it's exploded. It's gone off the charts, and I think it's worth about 10 times more than what it was back then. Can you give us a little bit of an overview around what you do, firstly, before we get into that growth story?
Yeah, sure. Digital Wine Ventures is the listed company, and at the moment we just have one asset, which is a business that I founded and sold into Digital Wine Ventures called Wine Depot. Wine Depot is a platform business, technology platform. We essentially are providing, wine and beverage producers a platform that they can use to manage their direct-to-consumer and their direct-to-trade channels, and hopefully sometime in the future their direct-to-export channels. And it essentially creates efficiencies in the supply chain. And so we're even though those channels that we're introducing to them are far more profitable, they generate much higher margins. Often that margin's lost because of the logistics required to support D2C in particular. And so the platform connects with the existing technologies, allows the data to flow through nice and easily. We hold their inventory across a network of depots around the country. And as those orders come through, they get sent to the depot closest to the customer. They get picked and packed, sometimes same and the next day delivered. And because they're delivering locally, it's a lot cheaper. So that's really, the broad overview. We're in the process of launching the direct-to-trade component as we speak. The Wine Depot Market, we're calling it, which is essentially it allows the suppliers to sell directly through to trade buyers and bypassing traditional distribution, which normally would cost them 35% of the wholesale price, and we're doing that for 10%. So it's a massive saving in terms of the margin that otherwise lose. And obviously it leverages that logistics network that we've already built out to fulfill those orders. So, pretty exciting times.
It is. And this isn't your first wine venture. You've had a few wine ventures before this that you've been successful in. Is this a problem, though, that you've always seen that is specific for wine that you're solving now?
Yes, it is. And it was really, you're right, this is the 8th venture in this wine and tech space. And in many ways, I think it was the challenges that I faced in most of those other businesses that led to the business plan for Wine Depot. There was about 10 years ago, I had a business called CrackaWines, and it was a pure play marketplace, consumer marketplace. We were very good at acquiring customers and generating sales orders, but then we would send the orders on to the wineries to get them fulfilled, and that's where things broke. And so, it was really sort of trying to figure out what would be a solution that would work for our business that led me down the path, to create the Wine Depot model. And then I realised at the time, when we started to model it up, that one business wasn't really big enough to support the platform, and the only way it would really work was if it was agnostic, and any channel could use that the supporting infrastructure, as well as not just being for consumers. It had to be able to work for trade as well. It was about 2.5, 3 years ago. I sort of moved on what was had become a wine collector business, and after merger and kicked off this one.
Beautiful. So just to put myself into the wine merchant's shoes, so I own a winery. I'm living the good life, or what people think is the good life, until you got to do the hard work. And I want to sell online. I've always probably sold into bottle shops or at the at my winery, and now I want to sell online. And you're offering through Wine Depot the opportunity to send a whole bunch of cases into a centralised warehouse. Is it one warehouse or a couple of warehouses?
There's a combination of models. So if they're a fairly small producer, we have one international distribution centre. It's located on the border of New South Wales and Victoria. And from that site, we're able to offer next day delivery into Sydney and Melbourne and Adelaide, plus 1 day into Brisbane. And so from that one warehouse, they can actually service the entire East Coast incredibly well. But if they're, a bigger winery and they've got more inventory and they would like to have same-day deliveries done, then we've got a network of depots in all the capital cities, so Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide and Perth. They can hold inventory in market and then so, and I guess, most wineries now have got to the point where they've got some sort of website up and running, but as you know, the website's not half of it. It's actually getting people to the website. That's a challenge. And so what we're doing is in that direct-to-consumer channel, we're helping them by allowing them to connect to lots of other online marketplaces and retailers. And so we've just recently announced a partnership with Vivino. So they'll be able to have their wines ranged through Vivino using that same inventory instance. And there's others, obviously, there's the Amazons and the eBays and things like Dan Murphy's, their, sort of marketplace and a whole host of other online retailers that we're looking to connect into that infrastructure. So it helps those smaller wineries, sort of develop that reach across a much broader market without having to, I guess, invest in the digital marketing capability.
Gotcha. So it's about connecting directly into consumers to do that fulfillment piece, but then the new marketplace is also allowing them to go into retailers as well and fulfill and reach a whole bunch of new customers.
Absolutely. And so, the direct-to-trade marketplace we're launching, that allows for a lot of small producers, they're probably too small for a distributor to take on. Or they just have a cost model that doesn't support giving away that much margin to a distributor. And so for all of those often very good producers, but just small volumes, we're enabling them a really easy ramp into the wholesale market. So, we're hopeful we'll actually grow the size of the wholesale market by providing them such an easy way to get on.
Yeah, brilliant. And you've got some amazing wineries already on your books, like Peter Lehman, Brokenwood, Casella, household names. But then also, as you said, there's a lot of smaller wineries that are now getting their chance to distribute their product all over the country and soon all over the world. Is there any standout stories that you can recall of how your distribution model has actually changed one of those businesses, those small wine businesses?
Yeah, look, I guess, we'd only just launched the business, it was in late 2019. You may recall there was some devastating bushfires ripping through most of Australia at the time. But one of the wine regions that was really badly affected was the Adelaide Hills. And there's a absolute gorgeous little winery in there called Golding Wines. And they were really quite affected by the fires, unfortunately. And a beautiful couple who've, sort of nurtured this, it's not just a winery, but, it's a wedding reception venue and, cafe restaurant as well. And, they were really knocked around. And so, they, and then, within, a month or two afterwards, everyone was in lockdown because of COVID. And so, their cash flow absolutely dried up overnight. And so we were able to quickly integrate them into our network and not only, support them at a logistics level, but get the message out there and promote it across our shareholders and I guess our contacts within the industry and community. We're sort of working with them. They were able to get their business back on track and get inventory moving, get that cash flow, and then get back into the job of fixing their winery. And so that was really rewarding to be involved with that. Yeah. And they're kicking goals again, which is fantastic to see.
Listen to this. That's me playing my new air guitar. Our friends at Signet recently partnered with Air Guitar Australia and were responsible for protecting the national team's air guitars while on tour in Australia and around the world. We are proud to announce not a single air guitar was broken while in Signet's packaging. Confused? Worried that you may have gone a little loco? I certainly am. Visit signet.net.au/air guitar to find out more.
In terms of how it works then, post that delivery, so in the traditional model, you send the order out on behalf of the winery direct to the customer. How does customer service and returns work from there?
Yeah, look, I guess it's up to the winery. A lot of wineries, want to remain hands-on, involved in that experience. We just passed all of the data points back to them to allow them to either manage the customer journey or the customer, they're giving them tracking information, etc. But look, there's a growing number of wineries that are saying, listen, can you guys do it for us? And so we provide a fully outsourced service for those wineries and not just wineries, but, craft spirits producers and craft brewers as well now. And in that way, it becomes just an extension of their business. We respond to their customers if we're them, provide them all of the tracking details, notifications, and sort of at some point in the future we'll allow them to we'll leverage some of our resources to drive up sales as well. So it's a combination. It really depends on the customer's needs. We're finding more and more people love the idea of passing that on to someone else to manage.
Absolutely. And then in terms of your fulfillment partners to get from the warehouse out to the customer, I noticed that you're partnered with Australia Post. Is it just Australia Post that you go through?
Look, we launched with Australia Post, but we've since added another 4 providers into our network, and it really depends on where it's going, where it's coming from, where it's going, and the size and type of delivery. So, we've introduced Couriers Please into the network. We're also working with direct couriers. We've got Border Express, tend to do a lot of our regional deliveries and larger deliveries into business. There's also, we're starting actually to develop out some of our own fleet capability as well, just to help support the the trade deliveries in particular, which is it's quite a specialised need to deal with a venue in the city at only at a certain time of day and certain days of the week.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I think what are the complexities around delivering wine and spirits and alcohol in general that a lot of people may not understand that aren't typically covered by a typical courier service that you really need to take into account?
Yeah, well, look, obviously, there's the whole responsible service of alcohol. So, obviously making sure that the recipients, the right person and they're at least 18 years old. They've got ID to prove that. But now it's there's in South Australia and recently in New South Wales, there's new regulations as well, particularly around same-day deliveries. And so, there's a whole code of conduct and new legislation that's been introduced to really try to manage that space. I guess it's been the explosion of, like the Jimmy Brings type, alcohol services and tipples and the like. And so, so there's a whole lot of there's compliance in there as well. And not every carrier, can afford to send its drivers off to get, responsible service training or building in the compliance piece into their PDAs and making sure that they're getting signatures and checking the ID and even the times of the day at which things can be delivered. So look, it's a little bit more complex. Obviously, it's fragile, it's bulky, it's heavy, prone to damage. It's not quite as easy as sending a little satchel full of bras or iPhone, sort of across the country. But yeah, look, it is something which I believe is becoming more and more specialised. I guess we really want to be the company that sets the benchmarks for standard service in that sector.
Yeah, brilliant. And where do you stand on compliance in terms of e-commerce and alcohol at the moment? Do you feel like we've got the level right, or do you think it's too strict or too relaxed?
Look, I think, the industry is predominantly been self-regulating up to now. It's just probably with COVID, there was a whole lot of metrics which got distorted. It made it sound like everyone was getting, at home getting lashed and alcohol getting into the hands of minors. But the reality was it wasn't. If you look at the whole consumption of alcohol over the last year, it's actually declined. It was really what was happening was there was getting more and more going out through online deliveries, obviously, but less being consumed on premise. So look, I think generally everyone's recognises the risks associated with it, and I think there's certainly evidence to support that the self-regulation is working at the moment. Look, it doesn't hurt to bring in some of these stricter controls just to make sure that there's no harm being done, particularly to minors or having alcohol delivered into communities where it's just not meant to be as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if we've got wineries or brewers or any alcohol producers listening to this and they go, oh, this sounds fantastic, we're on Shopify at the moment or we've got our other systems, how much technical integration does it take to actually move into having Wine Depot fulfill on their behalf?
Look, we've developed standard integrations now with most of the e-com platforms. So Shopify, BigCommerce, WooCommerce, Magento, 1 and 2. So, we can spin up an integration with them, generally within 24 hours. We often do that, some complementary, we don't do a lot of work. If they've got a custom system, ideally, we'd need to work with an API and connect that with our own API. But look, we've managed to develop integrations with most of the ERP systems, accounting systems, point of sale systems, a whole bunch of things. So, generally, it's a pretty easy process. As long as they've got someone who's got some technical skills to help us configure things. And the trickiest thing is always making sure we've got the units to measure right. So if they want one bottle delivered, they get one bottle really well and one case and vice versa. So, but look, I guess that's where, in many ways, the platform we've created is not just, helping them manage their inventory and orders, but we're providing them almost like a device that or a piece of technology that allows them to connect to the ecosystem. And so that includes your own technologies, but others, like I mentioned before, Vivino and other online retailers. And it's I think that's where technology's moved so far in the last 10 years that, getting those connectors in place now is actually pretty simple. And, that's really, I guess, a lot of what our platform does for them is just make it simple and streamline the whole process.
You must look at e-commerce today compared to when you were launching CrackaWines back then and go, oh, it's so simple to start e-commerce now compared to when I was playing around in the early days.
Oh, mate, listen, the amount of money we tore up on custom sites, it scares me now. I look back at it, we'd see a new feature come out, like refer a friend or something, and you get the developers in, would bunker down, and 2 months later, the team of 6 would pump out a new tool for you, and now you can subscribe to that sort of thing for $2.49 a month, from one of those app stores. But yeah, look, it's come a long way, and it's just that those whole package systems, like Shopify, are just absolutely amazing. They just continue to release functionality every day of the week, and if you're a startup, you're mad not to harness the power and potential of some of those platforms just to give you a running start. Maybe down the track, if you're going to be create an entirely new product, particularly an app, you might need to develop something yourself. But yeah, these days it's gosh, I wish they'd been around, the amount of dollars we could save. So.
But it's also too, now you've got your custom services and niche providers, people like yourselves going, I need to work backwards now into the Shopifys and into the BigCommerce and into the Magentos rather than the other way around. So sometimes you don't need that custom base because everyone who's doing the customizations outside of you are actually coming back your way.
That's right. Yeah, no, it's so true. And I think this whole, the last couple of years, this headless architecture has developed as well, and so if you get doing anything tricky, you can build it in the background and then just use some of those e-commerce platforms just as a way of dressing up the customer experience. But yeah, no, look, it's they've moved beyond e-commerce now, and they're now becoming fully functional ERP systems as well. The ability to build flows in and make them, automate not just marketing, but a whole range of functions. It's getting pretty powerful, and I think that we're only just seeing the start of what potential could get unleashed from these once you start to layer a bit of AI in as well. So.
Absolutely. Have you got AI plans in the back of your mind?
Yeah, look, of course. I think we'd be mad too these days. For us, with particularly the direct-to-trade marketplace, we're dealing with a really broad range of user types that have very different needs. And, it's not quite as predictable, I think, as consumers. Whether you've got a venue that might be a Chinese restaurant and, the type of products it needs versus a steakhouse, they're poles apart. But you can't just stereotype them and you need to really pull in as many data points as possible to help refining and curating that offer for them. So we're certainly, we're at a stage now, we're just more accumulating the data to help us make make those steps down the track, but we're certainly building the infrastructure to allow for that capability in due course.
Yeah, absolutely. So the last question I've got on the model, if we've got potential vendors listening or wine merchants, what's the pricing model to be involved with Wine Depot?
Yeah, sure. So look, with the, I guess if we look at just the logistics part to start with, we charge just a very simple handling fee. It's about $2.50 a case to process something through our network. And then the delivery fees depend on, I guess, where their stock's located, where it's going. But in most of the major capitals, it's as little as $7.95 a case to have it delivered. So compared to shipping it from, let's say it's Margaret River It might cost you $35 or $40 a case to get wine across to someone in Sydney. It's a mammoth saving. With the direct-to-trade marketplace, we're just working on 10% of the transaction value as a commission, compared to the 35% the distributors take. And often a distributor will want another 10 to 50% on top of marketing support. So it's dramatically different. We're also, obviously, then they're getting access to our cheap delivery rates as well. So there's it's a bit of a no-brainer when they look at, I guess, the amount of money that they can save, but also the amount of time they can save in getting their products to market. And as you know as well, there's a direct correlation between how quickly you can get your products delivered in terms of how quickly they'll come back and reorder and how quickly they'll give you a nice rating as well. So and when you get it wrong, that all works in inverse at a compounded rate. And so.
Absolutely. You hear about it, don't you?
You do. Online can be very rewarding if you get it right, but it can be very punishing when you get it wrong. So a lot of what we're trying to do is provide the platform that allows those wineries to compete with big retailers.
Yeah, it's funny. It follows kind of a similar theme. We were speaking to Justin Hilberg, who's the MD of Surfstitch, and they've just opened up fulfillment for other brands as well using the Surfstitch model. And we were talking a similar line around, people who have been in the industry for so long and solved the fulfillment issue. When you're coming into e-commerce for the first time, often your head's in that spot of, how do I acquire new customers? How do I deliver a great online experience? And then it's the, fulfillment moment. And if you can leverage people who have been in, because it's the hardest thing to crack, if you can leverage people who've been in it for a long time and get their efficiencies of scale and their process straight away, that's a huge competitive advantage.
Yeah, no, you're so right. And I think it does take a while to get there and just to get the scale. I mean, there's a lot to even get the tech working in behind the scenes. Often it's little things about just how you actually cut up those routes and the handovers between the different providers as it gets passed down the line. I mean, people sort of have this vision that there's one driver will set off from Adelaide and be responsible for delivering a case of wine all the way to someone in Brisbane on a bed of cotton wool, but it doesn't quite like that. So, but yeah, no. Look, and I think that if you look at the businesses that have done well in e-commerce globally, I mean. It is the fulfillment that's actually separated them. I mean, Amazon, in particular, obviously, Alibaba in China, that, they were businesses that focused every resource on fulfillment rather than the e-com component, and that's really what put them on the map. And even locally, businesses like Appliances Online, they cracked, delivering big, bulky, household appliances, and they turned it into a fantastic experience and taking away your old ones. And, look, I think, that the people who focus on that part are certainly the ones who tend to succeed.
Absolutely. Now, we alluded to it at the start of our conversation around the massive growth, because you're ASX listed, and where you've been in the last 18 months, the market valuation is about 10 times of where you were 18 months ago. What do you put that down to in terms of what have you done that you can go, the market now gets what we're doing?
Yeah, look, I guess you're right. A big part of it is telling the story. And, it is, it's jumping on podcasts like this and, turning up to investor briefings and just getting out and communicating with the industry and financial markets in particular, with what we're doing. So look at this, that's a big part. I guess the other thing is that, once you come into that space too, I mean, public companies, it's a new experience for me. It's my first public company. And so, a lot of it I've been learning on the way. But, if you say something, you're going to do something, then if you do it, you get rewarded. If you don't, you get punished. And so, a lot of it is just making sure that, you've got a clear vision, I guess a roadmap to achieve that vision, and then I guess just identifying all the different steps along the way to the investment community, and then not getting try not to talk about what you're going to do, but talking about what you've done. And I've certainly found that to pay dividends, and because there's sometimes things for whatever reason you can't do, like it just doesn't happen, or there's a change of strategy, or COVID, so you need to make a quick pivot. So keeping the market informed is really critical. We get congratulated by brokers and investors alike just about the frequency of our communications and giving them updates and not expecting them to understand the jargon or the terminology that we kick around and trying to put into simple and plain language. But look, I think, a lot of, we've been lucky to be in the right place at the right time. And, when COVID kicked in, first thing people did was stock up on toilet paper. Then it was groceries, then it was alcohol, right? So we saw 100% volume growth overnight across our customer base because of that. I guess, we've got the investment market is full of a lot of weird and wonderful businesses out there, a lot of mining businesses and a lot of, financial services, and, there's certainly a strong tech sector, but there's not that many wine businesses or alcohol businesses. You can count them on one hand. And so we've got a combination of wine, which, lots of people love. We've got tech, and then, the logistics piece. And so it's sort of the holy trinity, I think, is really, we've been able to excite people at different levels. And then I think once they've understood the fact that, there's so much vertical integration with what we do that, we really begin to own a big part of the value chain. And by being agnostic and working with anyone and everyone, we're not out there at the coalface trying to compete for customer sales, but we get a clip of every single bottle that gets moved. I think once people realise the scale of the addressable market, not just here in Australia but globally, then they get excited. But it's been a wonderful journey. It's been such a learning curve. It's been exciting, exhilarating for me, and this week we topped $200 million market cap. That was. I'm still a bit dizzy from it, to be honest. But I think I've set out to create an ASX 200 company. I think the vision and the team that we've assembled certainly capable of achieving it. It's a matter of just how long it's going to take, and we're just getting on with the job.
Brilliant. And it has been something that I've enjoyed watching as well. Like most companies you follow on the ASX, you get updates every half year, and then if something big happens, but you do release every 30 days around new wineries that you've brought in, because COVID could have hit and you could have benefited in terms of the huge uplift from consumers. But if you weren't bringing on more wineries and more suppliers, then you would have missed out on that growth. But you could see every month more and more wineries coming on quickly. From a B2B perspective, is there any specific tactics that you've used to get those wineries and alcohol providers jumping onto the platform quickly when an event like COVID happens?
Yeah, look, we work with about 400 brands at the moment. They've been accumulated over a year, bit over a year. So there's roughly 30 or so a month that we've been signing on. When COVID first hit, we realised that the industry was they had their backs to the wall, and we knew that we relied, I guess, on their business for our businesses to survive. And so we came out very early and provided a regional winery support package where we waived a lot of costs and actually gave them some free credit to use towards getting up and running. And it was just to take away the barriers to entry, make it really easy and no-brainer for them to get on. And then we sort of relied then on, I guess, the word of mouth for them to really get out and tell the rest of the community about us. And, in regional areas, it's gold, right? It really is gold. So much business is done on a handshake basis and through word of mouth referrals. And so, by planting those seeds and then continue to water them, we've been able to really get a strong presence in a lot of regions. And, I think in McLaren Vale now we've got, more than 90% of the wineries that have got cellar doors using our services. And so that's predominantly through word of mouth. We've got to keep getting it right, because obviously it can work against us. But it's been some of that grassroots strategy. We certainly we didn't throw any, we threw nothing at marketing really and advertising. We, invested on boots on the ground, getting out and knocking on doors and telling stories and seeing in which ways we can help and getting behind industry initiatives. When people were in trouble, whether it's raising money for bushfire, support, or whether it was, female winemakers or there was someone trying to raise money for breast cancer, by selling wine. We just do what we can to get in behind those as well. And I think that when people see that you're trying to be a good citizen within the industry, then they accept you into that space and welcome you with open arms.
Yeah, brilliant. It's that sense of community definitely comes through in all your communications. You mentioned there about telling stories, and I can't let you go. One of the things that I read in my research is a story that you told around a collection of early 1800s French wines that you had a mystery man pick up from you. I think it was back in the CrackaWine days, was it?
But it was before then, actually. That was my wine business. So that was my first business. So that was a business we offered climate-controlled storage wine collectors. And to be honest, it was never meant to be a big business. It was meant to be a little side gig for me to make my wine drinking tax deductible. And again, right place, right time, it took off, and I ended up with 11 sites around the country and, probably about 85% market share in that space. But look, we can probably talk about who he is now. I can reveal his identity. He has passed away, but it was Rene Rivkin. And which is sort of ironic now that sort of on the public company space. But it came in. I think there was 7 bottles, and they'd been acquired from a Russian cellar that had been buried and uncovered. I think actually somewhere near Georgia. And anyway, these were amazing wines, and they were all hand blown bottles, and they were in various states of decay. None of them were really drinkable, to be honest, but they were rarities and collectibles. And so anyway, we were charged with storing them, and then I don't know. It was after a couple of years. There was a lad was sent down to pick these up because they'd been sold to someone, and anyway, it was like something out of Lock, Stock, just making barrels. This sort of henchmen sort of turned up, a muscle-bound guy in his early 20s. And anyway, he insisted on seeing the wines, right? Because they were all wrapped up in bubble wrap, and then in boxes, and then another box. And I said, look, we're happy to take him out, but once you take him out, you understand you're taking responsibility for these, He's like, yeah, no problem. Anyway, he was checking them. God knows what he was looking for, because he was certainly no art historian or had any sort of expertise in the area. But he had one of the bottles, and anyway, I don't know what happened. It just slipped in his fingers, and it didn't fall far, like maybe 2 inches onto the timber table we had in the office, and it cracked, this bottle. It just cracked like an egg. It was just amazing to watch it crack, right? And all of this wine just spilled out over the table. Anyway, I had one of the lads that was working for me at the time. He's run over to the water fountain. He's got all of the plastic cups, all of these plastic cups. He's put them around the edges of this table, and as the wine's spilling off, it's dripping into these cups, and then he's putting the cups together. And anyway, for about 15 minutes, this big burly guy didn't move a muscle. He was just in shock. He didn't know what to do, and he was obviously trying to process how he was going to explain to his boss that he destroyed a bottle of wine worth thousands of dollars. And anyway, it was a bit like that scene when I think what was the Australian one where people
two hands.
He buries the money on the beach of Bondi. Right? It was something akin with that. So, but anyway, my lad came back to me, and he'd managed to collect enough wine, and we sat there, we did cheers, and we got to drink. I think it was I can't remember exactly. I think it was like an 1847 Chateau Lafite.
Wow.
And it was awful. It was terrible, but I can say that I've had a wine that old. So, but anyway.
Oh, wow. What a story. I love it. And last one I've got for you. Do you have a good value wine? As a wine connoisseur, Do you have a good value wine that you think we should be keeping an eye out, or an upcoming winery that we should look out for?
Oh, look, I'm a mad Pinot Noir drinker. It's my go-to drop, so I drink a lot of Pinot. But look, I've come across a wine recently. It's not that cheap, to be honest, but I think it's going to be a remarkable wine which will become incredibly sought after, and it's made by a friend of mine, Rob Walters, and his vineyard is in Macedon, and it's called Place of Changing Winds. What a mouthful! But already, the industry is chatter about these wines, and if you can get on his mailing list and get your hands on some of these, I mean, even as one of his oldest mates, I was only able to get a couple of dozen this year. And but look, I've only opened a couple of the wines so far, but they're absolutely gorgeous. If you're into really good, Pinot Noir, but look at the value end. Look, I love Giant Steps actually. They make wines from a couple of different regions, but the Yarra Valley Pinot is fantastic, and you can often get it on special for about $25 a bottle. And it's a great drop.
When Tamburlaine Organic Wines were looking to push their expansion nationally and internationally, they realised that their custom-built POS-focused platform just wasn't going to cut it. They selected Shopify Plus as the foundation for their expansion. Plus allowed Tamburlaine to create tiered member pricing using scripts, introduce web chat, and see customer churn analytics. The result? A 30% conversion rate boost within the first 6 weeks of migration. Now that's something to cheers to. To read more of Tamburlaine's story and see other case studies, visit the customer section on shopify.com.au/plus.
So what's next for yourself? I can't imagine that you're going to stop still at any time. What's next for yourself and Digital Wine Ventures?
Yeah, look, I'm running out of ideas, Nathan. I think I'm going to make this one my finale. But my background actually, I was an architect, and I guess architecture is actually quite similar in some ways. The process of building buildings to building businesses, and so the only difference is, I guess, in business you get. You after building, you've got to keep it and run it, which is the trick. But look, I certainly I really enjoy creating things from scratch and building out new ideas. And I think with Wine Depot, we've got a real opportunity to build the business off in a lot of different directions. And so I think there's, and I guess I've done all my businesses. I've done that. Start with one core product which you use to disrupt a market, and get a foothold in it, and then leverage off that to create other products and brands and services. And so look, there's lots of ideas, I think, in terms of where we can grow out, both I guess upstream closer to the venues, and sort of helping them with systems to manage their particularly inventory replenishment, reordering, but downstream into the wineries as well, and taking more tech into those spaces. And certainly, the platform we've built has applications in other markets. Like we're the only fully integrated, sort of trading, logistics, and payment platform available in the world at the moment. And so, we'll be keen to push that into places like, particularly the UK, which has got a strong legacy market for Australian wine. And the beauty is, I guess, when we push offshore, we've not just got a platform software application. We've got relationships with wineries that we can take as well. And so, we could very quickly become the go-to for Australian, New Zealand wine in any market. And so yeah, watch your space. Obviously, a bit hard at the moment, sort of expanding while we're all sort of locked up in our bubbles with COVID. But yeah, no, look, it's certainly the thing I love about the industry, and probably the part of the industry I'm in, is that it's old world meets new world, and I get to spend time, trumping around in vineyards and and talking to people that are absolute salt of the earth, and they're passionate and creative, and they love their product, and then trying to find ways to help them make their businesses more profitable through tech, and that's it's a real privilege to be able to work in an industry that's got roots in the ground, so to speak, physical roots.
Absolutely. Oh, very exciting, and obviously huge potential, and making a real difference to those businesses who you're fixing one of their biggest problems. Last one I've got for you. How can people, if they've heard this and they're really interested in connecting with you or your team, what's the best way for them to go about it?
Look, definitely through the website, which is winedepot.com, so winedepot.com. Our corporate site is digitalwine.ventures. So there's more information about, the ASX listed company there, and I guess our mandate. We obviously, Wine Depot is the only investment at the moment, but we are looking to diversify over time into other parts of the wine and beverage supply chain. And sort of reach out through the website, and we can connect them depending on whether a supplier or a buyer. We can certainly point them in the right direction. And if anyone's interested in getting on board as an investor, to our stock code is DW8. Put that on your watch list, and sort of join the comrades that are sort of helping us take this vision to the world.
Absolutely. I can recommend it, even if you're not an investor, put it on the watch list just to get the monthly updates. It's fascinating business to watch and invest in. So thank you, Dean. Really appreciate you sharing your insights and your journey so far.
Not a problem. As again, thanks very much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure.
Now, it wasn't a path that I expected to go down too much with Dean, but what stayed with me after the conversation was the importance of communication and trust when building a business like Wine Depot. Despite being a tech platform and playing in the field of e-com, all of which is usually automated, Dean and his team have spent a huge amount of time face-to-face with their grape farmers, aka their wineries, and their potential investors. He knows that no matter how good their tech is or advanced their data techniques, he doesn't survive if he doesn't bring along those key stakeholders for the journey. It was a great reminder that you need to assume the most basic level of communication before getting too fancy in order to build trust. And I think that goes for all of us playing in e-commerce. To finish up, I have 3 resources for you. Firstly, if you're a first-time listener of Add to Cart and you want to stay up to date with new episodes, head over to addtocart.com.au and you can sign up for our weekly newsletter. We'll let you know every time a new episode drops, as well as giving you my 3 takeaways from each episode and a link to the transcripts so you can know that this is an episode that you want to dive straight into. Secondly, if you want a weekly roundup of the best e-commerce case studies, tools, and research, sign up to the High Five Friday newsletter, which is delivered to inboxes at 8 a.m. every Friday morning. I read all the e-commerce news and send you the bits that I think you can take action from. Sign up at 12high.com.au/high five. And the last thing, if you are looking to explore your next e-commerce opportunity, head over to esuitetalent.com.au. We are a dedicated e-commerce talent agency connecting the best e-commerce talent with the fastest growing brands. Check it out, sign up to the email, and get in touch with me if you want to discuss your next move. Until next time, thanks for listening and keep those customers adding to cart.